tell the audience about how you got started in real estate. Cool. Dan Lofgren, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people know about you from your 99 Sky project, but there's a lot of, or Liberty Sky.
Liberty
Sky. But you've been in the Salt Lake real estate world for a while, so let's take it back to when you first got started in real estate.
You know, I took a job working part-time for a company by the name of Prowsewood in 1975. That was a job to work through school, through college. In 1978, I joined that firm full-time, and leaping forward from 1978 to 1997, by 1997, Dick Prowse and Bob Wood, the founders of that firm, my mentors, my personal mentors, had reached a point in their lives that it was time for them to take a step back. And they gave me an opportunity, gave me an opportunity with ownership in the company. And in 1997, the three of us sold that company to a company by the name of Boston Financial. Marvelous people. Their primary business was tax credit syndications. We were deal flow for them, right? We were actively developing tax credit product. But in just a couple of years, just 2 years later, Boston Financial was sold to Lend Lease, a large Australian firm. Now, at that time, they had a market cap of $7 billion. Today, that doesn't sound so wildly impressive, but at the time, that was a big number. That was 21 years ago. It was a big number. We operated Prowsewood. We continued to operate Prowsewood as a subsidiary then of Lend Lease, but Lend Lease had really no interest in the markets where we were active. They just operated at a very different scale. In the U.S., their primary markets were New York and San Francisco. I was commuting to San Francisco to work on a high-rise tower on Pier 35.
I didn't know that.
And they shared with me that my next assignment was to go to Singapore to lead the residential development group internationally. Okay, Singapore's an awesome place, right? But it's not where I wanted to go, and it's not what I wanted to do. And it's a young family at that time. And we saw everything meaning me and the Prowsewood team, everything we had built up over our careers was slowly just being unwound and dissipated. And that was just a little bit heartbreaking. And so in 2001, I made Lend Lease an offer to buy back what had been Prowsewood.
How'd they respond to that? Were they open-minded?
They're such kind people. We were such a small part of the balance sheet of Lend Lease. It was I don't want to say they were happy to have that happen.
Yeah.
But it was just okay. That's fine. They were really such good people, and we bought the company back, and some of the general partnership interests, all of the personal property, the operating company. But for reasons I won't take the time to explore or expand on, they didn't sell us the name Prowsewood back. And so on June 1st of 2001, we became Cowboy Partners. And Cowboy Partners pressed forward with the business plan, more or less, that Prowsewood had developed prior to becoming part of Lend Lease. It's what we were doing in those decades before and up and through the Boston Financial period. we had some real specific notions about who we wanted to be, what our business area was, what our we felt like we understood what our strengths were and what they weren't. What our weaknesses were, and that helped us formulate a game plan that we're still in the process of executing now, 22 years later.
Hmm. And so your time at Prowsewood, was it exclusively tax credit deals, or were you doing
No,
other stuff as well?
and now tax credit didn't even exist until 1987.
Hmm.
So in the earliest years, when I joined them in 1975, my job was as a cleaning swimming pools and mowing lawns.
Yeah.
I graduated, got a degree.
Was it University of Utah?
University of Utah. At the time, the University of Utah actually gave a degree in advertising. That's what my degree was in. I thought I was going to be the next J. Walter Thompson, and that's another story. Yeah, it's another story. But
Yeah.
I went to work for Prowsewood, and a lot of multifamily development. The condo market was pretty strong. We did a lot of condominium development.
And this was in the late 70s, early 80s?
Late 70s, early 80s, did a lot of condominium development. And the business model at that time that we were pursuing was the profits from condo development were being reinvested into apartment product with the idea of a long-term hold.
And that's not like a 1031 exchange,
No,
right? It's
no, it
just
couldn't.
like
No, because
the
you know,
tax laws back then were so weird.
well, but the
like, yeah.
condos you sell them one at a
Yeah,
time, right? I
yeah.
mean, so that didn't work. So
Yeah.
the taxes were being paid on it, but there were profits being generated because the market was okay.
Yep.
It wasn't just killer, but it was okay.
Yeah.
Profits were being generated, and we were developing apartment product. And at that same time, tax laws were sort of encouraging investment in multifamily. And if you'd been around a long time, you don't have time for me to try and explain it today, but the pre-1986 tax laws
Yes.
were such that we were essentially selling losses, right?
Yeah, the doctors and dentists.
Yeah.
See, that's
right.
I wasn't sure if you could 1031 because
No.
back then it was so crazy.
Yeah.
So
Of course, the market was going through cycles, but the tax credit program came into existence in the late 80s, and a firm from Georgia, Flournoy Development, came to Utah. They had done some tax credit development in the South, came to Utah, and it was a brand new idea. Nobody really understood it, right? And we joint ventured with Flournoy on 2 projects. And that's what got us formally into Ltech deals. We had always been in affordable housing with a small a, right? Meaning we were selling condominiums. I so distinctly remember selling condominiums in the late 70s that were priced in the high 50s. Right.
wow.
I really, so some level of affordability was always a
Yeah.
part of what we did, but the formal affordable housing, affordable with a capital A,
Yeah.
meeting the criteria, our entry was those joint ventures with Flournoy. And we found some marvelous rewards out of doing that housing. It's different. There are some different challenges there. It's a different set of expectations around what you're going to extract from it. But we found some marvelous rewards, and we continue to do that today. About almost half of our portfolio today is income restricted in one way or another.
And how do you decide, like if I sent you a piece of property on 123 Main Street, how do you look at it and say this is either going to be market rate, affordable, or mixed income?
And wouldn't that be cool if there was this checklist I could hand you and say, this is how you do it?
I was hoping you did.
That's not,
Yeah.
it's quite a bit more intuitive than that. But it's understanding where you are and understanding where the market is, understanding where the capital markets are, understanding what the potential attributes of that site might be, I will tell you, we start our analysis of a potential site with a bit of a bias toward the affordable housing bit. Some sites you're going to pay so much, there's just no way you can make affordable housing out of it,
Right.
right?
Right.
But it's a compelling site. You mentioned Liberty Sky.
Yeah.
Okay, how can you not want to do? Come on, it's 151 South State. How can you not want to do something really significant, really meaningful?
Yeah.
Right? There was no way we were going to make that work as an affordable housing
Right.
community.
Yeah.
What we built there was awesome. It was just really a fun building.
And how tall was Liberty Sky? It's the
Well,
tallest apartment so far until the new
Astra
one,
Tower
Intel
opens.
Astra.
Right,
So
right. At the time we built Liberty Sky, it was the first high-rise apartment built in downtown Salt Lake, right? Hard to imagine that we're into the 2020s and it's the first. There had been other residential buildings downtown, but they were all condominium product. So a fun building, 21 stories, pretty cool. I mean,
I agree.
very bold architecture.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of that
Yeah.
community, but no more proud of that community than we are of some of the most deeply targeted affordable housing that we do as well. That, like I say, has a different set of rewards attached to it.
Yeah. So I think we could spend the next hour talking about Liberty Sky, but
Yeah, sure.
just some differences. I think a lot of I notice this with cities all the time. They have one little area where they're like, we want to go 20 stories high,
Right.
but you just can't do it with economic feasibility with rents and stuff like that. And what was the tallest building that you built before that? And then can you compare and contrast, all of the other buildings you've built compared to going 21 stories high?
Yeah. So, during the condo era, we had done some taller buildings, but as rental product, 7 or 8 stories, it was sort of
Yeah.
4/3 on a
Yeah.
podium, and it was as big as you could make work. Liberty Sky was a move. It was a big step. And
say that.
and the reason that that apartment product hadn't been built in a high rise here, was just exactly what you described. It was, you couldn't make it pencil.
Yeah.
Right. The rents weren't high enough to rationalize the cost of concrete and steel construction. So it was the convergence of a couple of things. Rents in this market began to accelerate as a result of the job growth and the in-migration that we experienced. Rents started to accelerate. We went to work. Jacobson Construction was our construction partner on that. And we went to work with the Jacobson team, working on what we could find to make that type of construction more cost efficient. I won't use the word cheap because that has the wrong
Negative,
connotation, right? But even at our most cost efficient, it wasn't cheap, right? But we finally cobbled together a solution and took that big step. Now, I was very pleasantly surprised at how much support we got, not just from the city. The city was marvelous. The city was anxious for us to do that, but from the real estate community broadly, because we had kind of broken through.
Yeah.
And
I was cheering for you at home. So,
right?
yeah.
And that's pretty fun. That's a neat spot to be in. And now you see, obviously, Astra Tower is 40 stories.
I think
it's 40.
It's tall.
It's 39, 40, 41. It's a big, cool, very cool building. The Worthington around the corner.
Yep.
There's other high rise, in the pipeline. Interest rates in the last 12 months have kind of pushed some of that back a little bit, but the idea that Salt Lake is grown up, right? It's
no longer a tertiary market.
I mean, and this high rise apartment building was kind of a signal of being grown up, and nothing is more Maybe that's overstating it, but the dynamic of bringing people to live downtown is really powerful.
Hmm.
It makes it a place other people want to be. What's the best indicator of the place I want to be? Well, it's where other people, right? I mean,
Yeah, I want to be where the
the
people want
fact
to
that the
be.
people are there must mean there's something good,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so as we continue to make downtown more residentially dense, it becomes a more amenity rich environment, which in turn attracts new
Better. Yeah,
development. And it's this
the
cycle, it's this
flywheel.
really constructive cycle that builds on itself.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of fun
Yeah,
to have been there, kind of pushing over that first domino.
yeah. It's personally, it's my favorite project of yours. I think it's great.
Thank you.
But
Thank
kind
you.
of going to the other, I guess, end of the income spectrum,
Yeah.
we toured. I'm blanking on the name of the project that we toured last year for the ULI, but it's a deeply affordable project. Um, what was the name of the one that we toured?
Did we go to Liberty City Walk
Yes,
on
I think.
Second South?
Yep, that's it.
Mhm.
So that is a completely different type of deal for you.
Yeah.
That's very, what is it, 10% AMI type of deal?
No,
Or
25%. Yeah.
25%, but very, very low income relatively
Well, yeah, I'm
to all
renting
the
apartments there for $350.
$350. So there are so many people who are either market rate developers or affordable housing developers. And from my experience, you're probably the only guy I've seen do it right both ways. Um, do you have any special sauce for why you make those projects so great and kind of the impact that you've had on those communities? Like I guess that's probably a poor way to phrase
Well, I
it,
was just
but
going to say, hold on. I'm just going to sit and marinate in that for a
yeah,
minute. That's quite a compliment. Thank you.
yeah, of course. But I guess, can you compare and contrast those two different types of projects? Just they each have their struggles and they each have, the benefits from it.
Right.
Can you compare and contrast each one of those?
I suppose um, one of the big differences is what is the economic driver, right? Um, Liberty Sky or other market rate conventional product, there's a return on investment.
Hmm.
That's what we're chasing,
Yeah.
right? In the affordable housing arena, it's sort of a different mix of rewards that we're looking for. We obviously we can't keep doing them and lose money on them.
Yeah.
So there is a return on investment,
Hmm.
but it's not an investor driven return on investment. It's a reward for our hard work.
Yeah.
If that
That does
if
make
that's
sense.
distinguishing, right?
Yeah.
In a large scale market rate project, I may have a handful of investor partners,
Hmm.
and hitting their expectations is what
Yeah.
that's sort of the bottom line that drives this.
Yeah.
That's not so in affordable housing. We're working for a profit. We need to make money to be able to keep doing them.
Yeah.
But what we're chasing is a reward for our hard work, tenacity, diligence in getting them done.
Hmm. And let's kind of transition into building affordable housing because, like you said, there has to be a profit. You can't do that stuff for free, and you certainly can't lose
Yeah.
money. So let's say that I'm a market rate developer,
Yeah.
and I listen to this podcast, and I'm just fascinated by the world of Ltech and attainable housing. Can we break down a simple $10 million deal, how we would do that?
Yeah. We'll certainly take a shot at it, right?
Yeah.
There's a bit of a contradiction in what you just asked me. There is no simple Ltech deal.
Yeah.
They are complex
Yes.
by virtue of the IRS code and that enables them. Section 42. Sometimes they get referred to as Section 42 deals. There's a huge industry of consultants across the country helping guys like us try and untangle
Interesting.
all of those rules and regulations. But Ltech housing is in my observation, a marvelous way for someone to enter the residential development field because the barriers to entry are different. They're relative. The capital needs are relatively small, and it's in comparison,
relative, yeah.
right? There is still capital that's required to get a deal off the ground, but it's relatively small. But let me try and explain sort of the 5 or 6 steps that it goes
Yeah.
through, right? I'm deciding it either happens one of 2 ways. I've got a piece of dirt and I say, oh man, that would be a killer tax credit deal, right? It's in a location that's walkable. My residents are this amenity, that. I'm in love with that as a Ltech deal. Or I say to myself, I really want to do a Ltech deal. I'm going to go find a piece of dirt, right? Sometimes it comes either way. But I'm convinced that this is a Ltech deal that should be done. I'm going to go to Utah Housing Corporation, and I'm going to make an application for tax credits, premised on a preliminary design in that project. I've got to have enough. I'm going to invest. I'm going to go out on a limb for enough design that I can get a reasonably reliable cost model done, and I can show Utah Housing what I'm doing. But that coincides with the need for design to also get entitled, right? I mean, so it's not, these things all work in harmony.
Yep.
So I've got a site, I'm working on one track, getting it entitled. And for affordable housing, sometimes that's the biggest challenge, right? And I'm working on another track, looking for a tax credit application. Now, generally, when we talk about Ltech, the leap is to a 9% deal. There's 4% and 9% deals, and I'll explain that more in a minute. But the most notable Ltech deals are generally 9%. The most commonly thought of are generally 9% deals. That's how the really deep targeting is accomplished, right?
So the deal we toured was a 9%.
Yeah, it's a 9% deal. That's how we generate the targeting. The number of tax credits available in any one year is capped, and it's on a per capita basis. So the state gets tax credits on the basis of how big our population is. The tax credits in Utah are usually oversubscribed by at least 2, and sometimes it's 3 or higher times, meaning there's 3 times as much demand for the tax credits as there is availability of the tax credits. It's become, so it's very, very competitive to get those tax credit allocations. You compete on the qualitative aspects of your project. You compete on the level of income households that you serve. You compete on your willingness and ability to serve special needs households. There's a long list of things. But assuming I've done all my homework, I've figured it out, I've got a preliminary design done, I've got a reasonably reliable cost model. You know, it's not down to the fine strokes, but you can count on it. I'm going to make a tax credit application. There's some fees attached to it, but relatively small up to this point. And I'm going to score well enough that I secure a tax credit allocation. From that point on, things change pretty dramatically because tax credit allocation is really valuable, valuable to tax credit syndicators. One of the best parts of Section 42, one of the things that really puts fuel in that in that engine is the fungibility, the fact that I can sell the tax credits to an investor. Imagine you're a large institution.
JP Morgan.
You're JP Morgan. I can sell you my tax credits. You'll use them for one of 2 reasons, and those reasons have changed a little bit over time. We can talk about that in a second. You'll use them for one of 2 reasons, but you'll pay me for those tax credits. I'll use the money that you pay me to buy down the basis, just reduce the cost of the apartment community that I'm going to build, So now I can afford to rent them at those low rents. So the bargain with the IRS is pretty straightforward, right? You agree to restrict the rents in that apartment community, and I'll give you tax credits,
Yeah.
right? Uh, I've competed with a bunch of other people for those tax credits. So to be competitive, well, Section 42 says I've got to have my units at 60% of AMI or below. At 60%, I won't win any tax credits because there are going to be people bidding much lower. In
Yeah.
Utah right now, it's slightly over 40% of AMI that those 9%
Wow.
credits are serving, right? 4% credits are a different thing. We'll
Yeah.
touch on that in a second, but the tax credit investor, those deals are, they want those tax credits. They'll actually bid for the tax credits. Now, at times, they've been in extraordinary demand. And believe it or not, tax credit investors have, at times, been motivated to pay more than the face value of the tax credits.
No way.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Today, they're not paying more, but they're, it's between 90 cents and $1 that they're paying me on the dollar for those tax credits. And so I may be spending in direct construction costs, maybe I'm spending $350,000 a unit to build these deals.
Mm-hmm.
But most of that is offset by the the monetization of the tax credits.
Yep.
So I can afford to rent them at that lower restricted level. In the process, in that whole structure, the tax code allows me to charge the project a developer fee. There's not always enough room in the deal to monetize the whole developer fee, but you can often monetize some of that developer fee. So there's cash coming out over the course of the development, right?
Yep.
That rewards you for the hard work that you've put in. The capital you need to build the deal is generally coming from the tax credits. So what little debt you have is very low leverage.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously today you're going to push for no leverage with interest rates where they are, right? So the deal comes together with these forces that are sort of outside of your efforts to develop. They're the result of the tax code. And it gets very complex in terms of the delivery schedule of tax credits. And it's right. But you work your way through that. Mm-hmm. And we're very fortunate to have some incredibly professional people in Utah at Utah Housing Corporation. I've been involved in tax credit development in several states, and you don't show this in Idaho, right? But
no, I would never.
Utah is just really quite remarkable in terms of the professionals, and they get it, they understand it, they're motivated by the right things, they want the housing, they want it done right. You'll work your way through. If you haven't done it before, you'll work your way through it with the help of those good people. I mean, honestly,
that's great. Yeah.
Now, in return for those tax credits, the tax code says I've got to keep them affordable for 15 years.
15. Okay.
Right?
Yep.
But remember, it's a competitive process. To get those tax credits, I probably had to pledge to Utah Housing, because they're scoring my application on how much community benefit is derived from it. I probably had to pledge 50 years affordability.
This is awesome. I love this.
To get tax credits, I probably had to pledge 50 years affordability.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of forever,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's forever.
Yeah.
Now, 10 years ago, there wasn't much of a resale market for those deals. Developer was just going to own them.
I'm excited to get into this because I don't know why people buy.
The market has changed. There are buyers out there buying tax credit deals. It's very hard to sell a tax credit deal before the end of the 15 years. Mm-hmm. There's some statutory compliance issues related to that 15 years that just make it hard. But after 15 years, there's a market for it today. Some really large scale investors in that business. So it's changed just a little bit, but so the financial rewards for somebody doing that first tax credit, that first 9% deal, whatever portion of the developer fee they've been able to monetize, right? There may be some cash flow out of the project. It's not going to be a rocket ship, it's just not.
Yeah.
I mean, but there may be some cash flow that you're going to hang on to that are going to incent ownership, right?
Yep.
And then you're managing the project. So you're
managing like the actual units.
yeah, I mean, probably, or you're hiring a manager.
Or when you say managing the project, are you talking construction
No,
management?
property management.
Okay. Yep.
Property management, which can be a source of revenue if you're in the fee business, if you're in the property management business.
Okay.
I mentioned earlier 4% credits. Those 9% credits are the tax credits I get are 9% of the value of the qualified basis. The qualified basis is essentially everything you're doing except the land and a few
your hard
fees.
costs and soft costs.
Yeah. Each year for 10 years.
Oh,
Well, that sounds pretty cool. I get
Yeah.
90% of my costs reimbursed by tax credit.
yeah.
Well, okay, it's not quite that straightforward and simple, but yeah, it's almost that. A 4% deal, well, you can do the math. You can leap to where that goes, right?
Yeah.
It's 4% each year over 10 years. So only 40% of it is offset. Those 4% credits are attached to tax-exempt bond financing. The limiter generally on 4% credits isn't the per capita allocation of tax credits. It's the per capita allocation of tax-exempt bonding capacity. So if I want to do a 4%, why do I want to do a 4% deal instead of a 9% deal? Well, because 9% is so dang competitive, I kind of maybe can't get it done.
I don't want to compete with you.
And a 4% deal maybe is a little less competitive, but a 4% deal will oftentimes be a mixed income development where I'm looking for cash flow off the market rate units, right? To help rationalize the development. And I'm selling those tax exempt bonds as that's my permanent long-term debt on the project. Much more to that story than you would probably care to hear today, but it's both of those markets today are very robust. There are tax credit investors buying those tax credits. It's not quite as honestly, my reaction was a lot like yours when I said people paid me more than $1.
Yeah.
I was like, really?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. Well, I chased that long enough to sort of understand why they were doing that. It's not quite crazy like that, but they are still a very marketable commodity. And the genius of Section 42, the genius of that tax credit program, is it brings the horsepower of the private sector. That's like me and you, right?
Yep.
We want to do these deals.
Yeah.
It brings us to the table to produce affordable housing. That's spectacular. I mean, honestly, that's like, no, that's how problems like this are going to get solved, is harnessing the horsepower of the private sector to do it.
Yes.
And it made, there's this little phrase, it made it possible to do well by doing good.
Yeah.
Right? They're important in the community. And I'll get on my soapbox a little bit about affordable housing, but there is no part of our communities, our society, that doesn't get better when we nurture housing stability and housing affordability. And by that I mean education, healthcare, air quality. You pick it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you how nurturing affordability and stability enhance that. So big fan. I mean, we're big fans of affordable housing. It's pretty cool.
I think that's the coolest part. I mean, Liberty Sky is an awesome project, but to think of the legacy that you create with these families who would have struggled so much more if it wasn't for the housing that you created is I don't want to start crying on the podcast, but I'm getting
I don't either, because I avoided telling you the Mulberry Park story because I get emotional when I tell that story. But now I'm going to regress a little bit and tell you anyway.
I want to hear it.
because of
So, yeah.
what you just said. Um, Real early on, late 80s, we did this development by the name of Mulberry Park. And it was down in a little draw. It was below the roadway, came down like this, and it's in a little valley. And it was these townhouses that circled the community green, large green space out in the middle of it. It's really kind of quaint, right? Kind of cute.
What city is this in, by the way?
It's West Valley City.
West Valley.
Yeah. And it was a deal we did. I mentioned earlier, Flournoy, the deal we did in partnership with Flournoy. I remember pulling into there one day. It was in a fall afternoon, and it was kind of one of those Norman Rockwell sort of,
Yeah.
the sunlight's at just the right
Yeah.
angle
The
and
golden hour.
yeah, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking down, and there were what seemed like hundreds of kids. I'm sure it was dozens and dozens, not hundreds, but it just this little green space. All these kids are out there playing, just having the time of their lives. And you can tell most of them came directly from school, hadn't even gone into their house to put their backpack away because backpacks are sitting around everywhere, and the kids are out there playing. And it just kind of, oh my gosh, if we hadn't done Mulberry Park, if this housing didn't exist, that those households can rent at a tiny fraction of the market, where are these kids going to be? What's the prospect for these kids, right? And okay, many of them would have been okay, but not okay like they are when they have a house that's safe, dignified, they feel comfortable, and the prospect is they can stay there for a very, very long time. They get to stay there the whole time. They get to go to the same elementary school 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 years in a row. How cool. Okay, that's because of this housing program, right?
Yeah.
We refer to that phenomenon, how those vibes, those feelings you get, the pride you have in the community you've built. We refer to that as psychic income, right? I can't bank it. I can't cash a check. I can't make my car payment with it.
Yeah.
But it's so real. It is so real.
Yeah. That is I love hearing stories like that because it's anytime you bring up affordable housing, or I guess it's probably better to describe it as attainable housing. I think it maybe has a better connotation, but all the neighbors say, I don't want, quote, those people living in my neighborhood. And I just think back to, that could have easily been you and I.
No doubt. Absolutely. No doubt. And, we built a community in Sugar House that without tax credits, no, that's not correct. This community did have tax credits attached to it. We've done a number of communities where we're able to set aside 20% of the units at 50% of AMI without the tax credits. It's a whole other story, right? But we did a community where a gentleman, we were there for, I can't remember, an event. And a gentleman, I had spoken for just a minute, and a gentleman sought me out and just said, hey, I need to thank you. I said, okay. And as we talked, I noticed, and it became, I figured out that he's blind. This gentleman was, had that disadvantage or that challenge in his life. And he says to me, because of you, and he was giving me personally credit for it, but it was a whole bunch of people that made that community possible. He said, because of you, I'm somebody. And I'm like, what? And I'm not going to share his name, but he was a part-time massage therapist. That's how he made his way. And he said, but because of you, I can afford an apartment of my own. I have an address that people can send me something. I have a place. I'm somebody. And it was like, I'm just standing there, just tears running down my face.
Yeah,
like,
geez.
how can I not want to do 100 projects like that? How can I not want to perpetuate that. I mean, that's like, oh my gosh, there's no better reward in the whole world for what you
Yeah,
do
geez.
than that sort of a conversation, right?
Yeah.
So isn't that awesome? Because of the tax credit program, because of Section 42, there's a way I can make a living at the same time I'm harvesting that psychic income, those kind of rewards.
That is incredible. You just made me
Yeah.
cry the first time on the podcast. So congratulations.
Well, no, it really is. Look, if you're going to do it because it's good business, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can make it work and you're not going to lose money at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not true. If you have the money to do it for free, do it for free,
Yeah.
because there are people who need that housing, not later. They need it now, right
Yes.
now, tonight. There are people who need that housing tonight. So, but my point is, make good business out of it. Make it sustainable for yourself. But there are some pretty cool things that happen along the way.
I 100% agree. I think just the legacy that you created, that's so cool. Kind of on the still on that affordable housing note, if you were, say, king for the day across the entire U.S., affordable housing is a huge priority. Are there 1, 2, 3 things that you think could really make a dent significantly? Is it rezoning everything to higher density, or what would you do if you were king for the day?
I'm going to resist getting on my soapbox because there are
Maybe a dozen things.
There are things I feel strongly about, but as I said a minute ago, there are people who need this housing tonight. And what we do as Ltech Affordable Housing isn't generally going to solve the problem for someone who's homeless.
Mm-hmm.
There's a transition, there's a move that has to be made
Yep.
before that. But to the degree we can nurture housing stability because it's affordable, we might prevent homelessness.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Or someone coming out of homelessness might find a place that they can become stable. Right? That's needed right now.
Mm-hmm.
And my view of affordable housing, and I don't want this to come off as too critical, but we're paralyzed by plans. Well, we're going to create an affordable housing plan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have this plan. No, it's not about the plan, man. We need the housing. The phrase I apply to it is do what you can when you can.
Mm-hmm.
City, county, whatever county, whatever housing authority, just go start doing the housing. There is, I'm not advocating being irresponsible. I'm not advocating abandoning the long-term strategic planning effort. I get it. But let's not paralyze ourselves by waiting for a perfect plan.
Or a study or something like that. If anyone from the city's listening.
We happen to know what the problem is. Yeah. It costs too much to build these for people to afford them.
Mm-hmm.
There is unprecedented levels of capital, public capital, and some private, being invested in affordable housing. Unprecedented. And all too often, it sits waiting for a plan. Or it gets, do what you can when you can. Let's build more of it right now.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's okay. There's a city owns a little half-acre parcel over here. Let's go do some affordable housing there.
Call Dan.
Because you know what? It's gonna. I mean, on that half-acre parcel, the one we toured, Liberty City Walk. That's a little less than a half an acre parcel.
Mm-hmm.
73 units. I think it's 73 units at Liberty City Walk.
It's more than zero, that's for sure.
Liberty Metro is on a half-acre parcel on Second East. It's 100 studio units, right? Well, that's 100 people that we. No, that's how we're going to get on top of this.
Yeah.
Is we're going to do it now, not waiting for a perfect plan, because a perfect plan doesn't exist. Because the needs are so diverse. There are so many different people coming from so many different directions. Let's take a look at what we need worst. What do we need right now? And on that half acre, let's go build some of that.
Yeah.
Then when we're done with that, we'll take a big deep breath and say, what do we need most now? And maybe it's more of the same, or maybe it's something different. Maybe it's some family units. Maybe let's start picking it off. Let's go do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Cities, counties, state. Let's build the housing.
Yeah. Let's bring it home on your newest project, Liberty Corner.
Yeah.
We're neighbors over there. I've got some
Right.
townhomes over there.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Good. Yeah, that's what we say as we put the Band-Aids on.
Yeah, the Band-Aids, and try not to refresh my bank
the
account
tourniquet,
after.
Yeah.
On that note of family units,
Yeah.
that is one of the, from my memory, one of the first family-sized units. There's multiple. How many 4-bedroom units or 3-bedroom units there?
Do you know, I won't get the mix exactly right, but
Yeah.
it's dominated by 3s and 4s.
Which is incredibly rare. I don't remember the last time I've seen more than 20 in a 200-unit building.
And you know, there are some suburban townhouse deals where 3 bedrooms are the rule.
But urban.
This is urban. Yeah.
Apartments.
Mm-hmm.
Let's walk through that deal, kind of how it came up. I love the location, obviously, but why the family style units, and what you hope to accomplish on that.
Okay, don't misunderstand this. There's a lot of ways that property could have been developed, right? It could be a market rate house. It could be a project. It could be a okay. I'm going to give you a $20 bill on my way out of here, because I just used the term project. We don't build projects. We build communities.
Great.
And so around our,
I love that, by the way.
around our shop, it's a swear jar. If you say project, you got to put $20 in. We build communities, but a lot of ways that could have been developed. But you sort of take a big deep breath and you look around and say, all right, let's do this as an affordable housing deal. Let's see if we can make this work. What's needed most? Where is the urgency? What is, if we're being really selfish and we want to maximize that psychic income, we're going for a big payday.
I love that.
What's it going to be? Well, it was kind of an easy answer, right? It was those family units, and family units in a spot where it's not obviously walkable. I mean, you know,
We're
the
getting
corridor there, right?
Yeah.
But it's getting there, and there is a grocery store. Well, actually, there's a couple of grocery stores walkable from there. It's wildly accessible to the traffic
Through the red line. Yep.
right? Well, hold on. This is a great affordable housing site,
Yeah.
right? The only thing missing from making that, a 95% affordable housing site, meaning scale of 1 to 100, it's got a lot of things going for it. The only thing missing is daycare. Okay, we'll put a daycare in it.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, all right. So the building's designed with a daycare on the ground floor. So we couldn't be more excited. It's a fun project to work on. Hard.
Yeah.
I mean, interest rates are high.
Yep.
Costs are high.
Everything's
It's
high.
hard. But you know what's so cool is the state, the county, the city, they so get it. They so understand. And that unprecedented capital being invested in trying to solve housing affordability challenges, we're able to layer some of that and put this deal together. So a combination of tax credits and some of those other sources of capital. This deal's going to work. 200 units of mostly 3s and 4s.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah,
I think we'll end it there. Dan, thanks
Okay.
for coming on. This was awesome.
my pleasure. Thank you. You flatter us by inviting us to talk about what we do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're the man.
Yeah.
Dude, this was awesome. I'm not trying to improve your ego, but that was,